If you're somebody who's looking for a residence in Southeast Asia, but you're not sure where to go, then this video might be interesting to you. My name is Jelena, and for the past 5 years, I've been working with clients and helping them legally reduce their taxes and go where they're treated best. And one of the countries that we most talk about in Southeast Asia is definitely Malaysia. And there are many ways that you can get a residence permit in Malaysia, and there are many perks to that. There are many cons to that, and we're going to go through all of that here today in this video. However, Malaysia and its residence program has done significant changes, and there are maybe additional changes coming up next year. Now, starting from the basics, when we're talking about a residence, generally when you obtain a residence, it can be a temporary residence, it can be a permanent residence, and it can be a residence that can lead you to a passport or not, depending on the type of the residence. In general, residence is an immigration permit that allows you to live in a certain country and in some cases work. However, when we're talking about Malaysia, that is not the case. Most of these cases, with most of the residences in Malaysia, you would not be able to work there, but you will be able to live there full-time if you want to. Now, when we're talking about some of the benefits of a Malaysian residence, in addition to being able to live in Malaysia full-time, the benefit is that you actually don't have to invest a significant amount of money. You don't have to donate money. In general, it's required of you to show proof of wealth and income and deposit some money in a bank account. So there's no sunk cost here. You're basically just showing them that you have money to sustain your stay, that you have enough money that you're deemed a high net worth individual or similar, so you don't have to actually donate, invest anything in the country in order to get a residence permit. Now, Malaysia is one of the countries that is most welcoming to foreigners. It can be a great place if you want to have a base there and live there full time. And it can also be a great option if you want to do the trifecta approach and just live in a couple of different places during the year. Malaysia generally has a good climate, a warm climate, and when it comes to quality of life, it is similar in some ways to Singapore and Hong Kong, although it is much cheaper to live in Malaysia than it is in Singapore, for example. One of the additional perks of getting a Malaysian residence is that you can open bank accounts in Malaysia as a resident, and if those are the banks that also have a branch or headquarters, let's say in Singapore, you would also be able to open bank accounts in Singapore even though you're not a resident in Singapore. Some of the downsides of the Malaysian residence is that now it has a minimum physical presence in order to maintain that. Before, this requirement didn't exist, but now you are required to spend at least 30 days or in some cases 90 days in Malaysia, depending on the residence. An additional thing that can be a bit of a hassle when it comes to Malaysia and living there is that they kind of made their tax system a bit less straightforward. Now, previously it was a territorial tax country. Now it's a bit more complex with certain things being taxed in Malaysia, even though they're foreign source. So it does require additional tax planning as opposed to before when it was a bit more straightforward. In addition to that, as I mentioned, they keep kind of changing the requirements, especially for the MM2H visa, and it is expected to undergo additional changes sometime next year. And take note whether those changes are going to affect you or not. Now, again, if you're looking for a passport through naturalization, Malaysia is not going to be the place for you. Now, with this visa, with any visa that you obtain in Malaysia, citizenship is virtually not possible. So Asia in general is not a great place if you're looking for a second passport through naturalization. Here, we're going to talk about 3 different residence programs that exist in Malaysia. The first one is the MM2H, or Malaysia My Second Home, which is the most famous one, and it was the most attractive one for a very long time. The second one is Sarawak MM2H, which is basically Sarawak My Second Home. And lastly, you have the Premium Visa Residence Program, which is kind of, as the name it says, very high-end and premium. Now, MM2H, with the new changes, it's available for people who are 35 years old or older, and there are different requirements. So first requirement is that you have to show proof that you have offshore income coming to you on a regular basis of 40,000 ringgits. Second, you have to show that you have liquid assets of 1.5 million Malaysian ringgits. And upon approval, you have to deposit 1 million Malaysian ringgits in a Malaysian bank account and keep it there for as long as you want to keep the residence permit active. Now, if you have dependents, then you have to add on 50,000 ringgit for each dependent. And if you're somebody who's a retiree or over 50, then you have to show offshore income of only 10,000 ringgits per month in order to qualify for this MM2H. Now, this may seem like quite a high price point, and it certainly is. It did undergo some changes and it went up, and as a result, it became less attractive. Now the Malaysian government is considering reducing these requirements for approximately 20 to 30%. However, those changes are pending. Additional thing that you have to do in order to maintain this MM2H once you obtain it is spend 90 days per year in Malaysia. It can be anywhere in Malaysia, but it has to be 90 days. So this MM2H visa is valid for 10 years. And in order to get it, in order to maintain it, you also have to have medical insurance according to your age. Now, one caveat here is also that when we're talking, when I mentioned that you have to show that you have liquid assets of 1.5 million ringgits. Those liquid assets actually have to be in your personal name. So that cannot be a corporate bank account, that cannot be a crypto account. It actually has to be in your name. It's preferable if it's in a bank, in a savings account, or similar, that you can show that you have liquid assets. So it cannot be something that's illiquid. So ideally, what you will show for liquid assets is basically cash in a savings account or a current account. That's ideal. Some things other might pass, but generally, a business account, money in a business account, crypto securities will not work for this situation. Now, the good side is that after a year, you can take half of the deposit that you put in the Malaysian bank and purchase a home in Malaysia with that money, or pay for education for your kids, or for any medical costs, you can use that money. So while you can take that money after a year, for purposes for what you can use it are generally limited. Now, as I mentioned, these requirements for MM2H are quite stringent and quite high, and kind of as a great alternative, especially for people who are 50 years or older, is Sarawak MM2H. Now, this Sarawak MM2H does accept applicants from 35 years or older. However, it's most appealing to people who are retirees or 50 years or older, because the reason being is that they have to only show 7,000 ringgits of offshore income coming to their account in the form of a pension or other type of income. Obviously, it goes up if it's a couple, if they're dependents, that amount goes up. And in addition to that, they have to place a fixed deposit in a Malaysian bank account of 150,000 ringgits, and it's double if you have a spouse dependent coming with you. So as you can see, it's quite a difference between these requirements and the requirements for the MM2H. So this is a much lower requirement than the regular MM2H. In addition to that, when you deposit this 150,000 ringgits, after a year, you can take 40% of that in order to purchase a home in Malaysia, pay for education, pay for medical expenses, or other specific things that you can use that money for. Now, with these requirements, you also have the requirement to spend at least 30 days in Sarawak per year. The rest of the time, you can live anywhere in Malaysia that you want, and you can spend as much time as you want in any part of Malaysia, but these 30 days you have to spend in Sarawak. Now, for applicants who are between 30 years of age and 49 years of age, this can be a very good option as well. But besides the requirement to show minimum offshore income of 7,000 ringgits, plus deposit 150,000 ringgits in a bank account in Malaysia, you also have to purchase a property in Malaysia. And if you have children who are 7 years or older, they have to be either enrolled in a school in Malaysia, or they have to be undergoing some health procedures in Malaysia. In addition to showing proof of offshore income of 7,000 and depositing 150,000 in a Malaysian bank account, you will also be required to purchase a property in Malaysia that's worth at least 600,000 Malaysian ringgits. And if you have kids who are 7 years old or older, you will have to either enroll them in a school, or they have to be undergoing long-term medical care in Malaysia in order to qualify for this program. So if you're between the ages of 30 and 49, this might not be the best option for you due to these requirements. However, if you're 50 years old or older, this program might be perfect for you. Now, the Sarawak MM2H is valid for 10 years. It's renewable after 5 years. And with this permit, you cannot work in Malaysia, and you cannot start a business there. You cannot conduct any business in Malaysia. So it's more of a passive visa than it is an active one. If you're somebody who's an ultra high net worth individual, you have a bit more money that you're willing to put in a certain country, you want to have a residence permit in Malaysia, but you don't want to live there, then the premium visa might be the right fit for you. Now, premium visa is a long-term residence program, which is valid for 20 years, and it's renewable after those 20 years again, provided that you meet the requirements. So some of the requirements include that you have to have a 40,000 ringgit salary per month of offshore income, so any type of offshore income. In addition to that, you have to open an account and put a fixed deposit in a Malaysian bank account of 1 million Malaysian ringgits, which you can, after a year, you can withdraw 50% of that and to spend it for health insurance, education, or purchasing a home in Malaysia. In addition to that, there's a participation fee of 200,000 Malaysian ringgits for the main applicant and 100,000 ringgits for each dependent. Now, the best part about a premium visa is that it has no minimum age requirement as other Malaysian visas do, and it has no minimum stay requirement in order to maintain the residence. So technically what that means is that you can get the residence permit and then just keep it in your back pocket for the next 20 years. Go there if you want, don't go there if you don't want, but just have something to hold on to at any point if you need it or if you want it. Now, in addition to that, the difference between the premium visa and the MM2H visas is that with this visa, you can actually work and conduct business in Malaysia. You have the right to study. You have the right to purchase real estate, commercial, or residential. So there are many perks that come along with this premium visa. However, the price point is higher. And in addition to that, when you're applying for this residence, you have to pay the 10% of the participation fee in advance. And that's before approval. The rest you can pay after you have been approved, but if you don't get approved, that's basically sunk cost. So 20,000 ringgits is sunk cost that is required to be paid in advance. Now, as you can see, there are different residence options in Malaysia, and which one is the best for you will depend on your circumstances, sometimes on your age, what you're willing to put in, on your liquid assets. So many different factors come into play when deciding what is the best residence permit for you. However, if you are somebody who's interested in living in Malaysia, you're interested in spending time there, then one of these residencies can definitely help you achieve your goals. So if you're somebody who's looking into moving offshore and you're serious about moving offshore but don't know where to start, subscribe to our channel and learn more in order to be more confident to take the next steps.